PR Connections Radio presents Ethics Realty is a full-service real estate agency that provides a service for finding the ideal property for residential, commercial, and investor-centered clients. Whether you're a first-time buyer or a seasoned buyer or investor, they provide service to all and listen to understand your goals and needs. For more information about their wealth and investment-centered services, call 702-518-1606 or visit their website, ethicsrealty.net.
All right, welcome to the Real Deal Podcast. I am your host, Davin Sundvick, and today we're going over the 5 ways to make money in real estate. Last episode, we went over how to prepare for a recession. Now I want to focus about some of the positives, right? Because if you're not saving up capital and getting it ready to deploy for an opportunity, well, then there's no point in saving up that capital in the first place, right? So let's figure out the different ways that we can use the real estate market to our advantage. Next podcast episode, we will focus on commercial real estate markets. Okay, so with that being said, first way that we can make money in real estate is through passive income. Second way is through price appreciation. The third way is through tax advantages. The fourth way is through massive income. And then the fifth and final way is through leverage, using loans as an advantage when purchasing or investing in real property. So let's jump into the first way first. Now, think of it this way. Passive income is as simple as it sounds, right? You buy a property and you rent it out to somebody and you receive a check every single month in the mail for owning that property and renting it to that person. If you're a homeowner, it works a little bit differently, right? Instead of writing that check to the landlord, you just write a much smaller check, hopefully to the bank. Over time, as rents go up and your mortgage payment stays the same, all in all, you do get a passive benefit from owning and just living in the home. So that's your passive income right there. Something to understand about this is we are generating income from not only renting it, but also from eliminating bills, right? And eliminating bills is so much more important, in my opinion, than creating more income. You see, the more taxable income that we make, the more taxes we have to pay. But there's no taxes that you have to pay from saving money. Essentially, if you were to lower a bill from, $2,000 a month down to zero, you don't pay any extra taxes for that $2,000 savings, right? It's just a $2,000 benefit on your current budget. So eventually paying off your home becomes a super, super powerful wealth building tool, as it allows you to have other monies invested elsewhere into possibly other tax advantaged areas of your life. Another huge benefit of it is, let's just say you're making $100,000 in order to fulfill your lifestyle. But now, you used to have a $2,000 a month mortgage. And if you were to rent the equivalent property, now it might be, $3,600 a month, right? Because just over time, rents have inflated, but your mortgage has stayed consistent. If all of a sudden, right, your mortgage is paid off, well, you no longer have to work at that same job. And so if it doesn't make sense for you to work at the same job because maybe it works you too many hours, or your body is just aching from the kind of work that you do, or you just really decide, you know what, I want to work part-time, or I want to just try a different career out that might pay a little bit less. Essentially, you can reduce your budget by over $24,000 because essentially you're eliminating the highest percentage of taxes off the top when you reduce your income. So it's a huge retirement advantage to be able to pay off your mortgage. And so that's a huge element of investing in real estate. Is actually the primary reason most people invest in real estate, yet it's not the most powerful, right? Something to understand about cash flow when it comes to real estate is it can be temporarily negative, but it often won't be permanently negative. So you can invest into a property. Let's just say you could rent it out for $2,400 a month, but with your mortgage payment and interest and taxes and insurance, right? And all the other things that go along with home ownership, you might realize it might cost a little bit more than $2,400 a month to actually own that property. And that's okay. Through time, inflation is going to work in your favor and rents are going to keep going up, but your cost of owning that property is not going to go up in proportion to everybody else's rents. So it is a long-term benefit, even if there's no short-term benefits. And something to keep in mind is your passive income is one of actually the lesser powerful aspects of making money in real estate. Yet it's the number one area that most investors focus on, and you should use that to your advantage and outcompete them. All right, let's go into the second reason or the second way to make money in real estate. That's through price appreciation. And this is very simple, right? Real estate has an inherent value, right? And so does the dollar, right? You can trade that dollar for cheeseburgers or you can trade those dollars for real estate. And over time, the dollar goes down in value. That's just how it works. But here's the thing. They're going to make more cheeseburgers next week. They're not going to make more land next week. So land is a finite resource. And as the value of the dollar goes down, right, and as the number of people go up, right, the demand for real estate skyrockets above both of those two numbers combined. And so what that means is if you look at the consumer price index, this is a very good explanation for why our prices are going up. And the consumer price index, for example, the past couple of quarters might be at 2.1%. This is actually below average if you look at the 100-year historic average of inflation. So that's a much better example. And that's usually hovering somewhere close to 2.9 to 3%. So let's just use 3% as quite a round number. That means that all of your bills, right, in totality are going up by 3%. That includes all of, and just follow along with me for a second here, that includes all the bills that you're eliminating. For example, who here owns a home telephone? Who's listening? I would imagine a lot of people used to pay for a home telephone and currently don't. So that is a 100% decrease on that particular item, which means that if all the other items that you're keeping around are beating the index like 4 or 5%, it still will average out to that 3% over time because the products that you're eliminating from your budget kind of help balance out the products that you keep in your budget that grow above that 3% number. So that's why you can go to the grocery store and maybe you see apples last year were $1 a pound and now they're $1.07 a pound. You might be saying, how could inflation be 3%? Well, people haven't stopped buying apples, and that's the reason for that. Think of it this way, though. Like I said, they're making more apples next year, but they're not making more real estate, which means real estate is going to be an even higher element in that inflationary table, right? So if inflation is made up of a bunch of different metrics, real estate is going to be above that average most of the time. And so what that means is if inflation is at 3% and if you took out all of the bills that we're eliminating in modern society this year versus last year, or that are being reduced, and the real average is more like 4 or 5%, real estate is going to beat that 4 or 5% number over a long-term period of time. And that is what is the most powerful aspect of owning real estate. And we should always look at rents as a proportion of the value of real estate. It's a way better way of shopping for real estate and looking at real estate than just simply looking at the dollars and cents of the mortgage payment. Because the mortgage payment can change based on how much money you put down, based on interest rates or a whole wide variety of things. But if you were just to pay cash for the property, how long would it take for that property to return its value to you in passive income? It's a much better way to measure the property. And we also have to include, hey, some markets are below average and they stagnate and they do not offer great price appreciation because the building's going down in value, the land's going up in value. And so it just kind of stays around the same price or just very slowly trickles upward. We don't really want to invest in those kind of markets if we're looking for maximizing the most powerful part of real estate ownership, which is price appreciation. We should be looking at markets like, cities like Hawaii, right? Anywhere on the coast of California, Las Vegas, Nevada, Reno, Nevada, New York City, right? Anywhere along the coast, the east coast of the Atlantic Ocean. These are all high price appreciation markets, and it maximizes that scarcity and the increase in demand that happens in a good economy. So, something to consider. Another powerful aspect of price appreciation is, like I said, remember, because there's a ratio between the price of the property and rents. As the price of the property goes up, you can expect rents to come up with it. And so you might actually find that over a long-term period of time, it's actually better to buy a property that doesn't cash flow now, but will cash flow later very well, versus trying to buy a property that cash flows great right now, but won't have a massive amounts of appreciation later on into the future. This aspect of real estate helps you make money even when you make mistakes. So essentially, if you buy a property in a high appreciation market, even if you overpay for the property, right? As long as you don't completely panic sell when the market is tanking, as long as you're willing to hold out through any of the storms that happen in the market, and you're willing to fix and repair the property as needed and hold out for the long term, you're almost guaranteed to make money through price appreciation if you buy in the right area. All right. Number 3 is tax advantages. This is the one that I feel like is the second most talked about, but it's actually the least most powerful aspect of owning real estate. Doesn't mean it's not powerful. It's just the least powerful. And we're going to go into 4 different ways that we can use tax advantages in real estate. Now, I like paying less in tax as much as the other person, right? Well, we shouldn't optimize our real estate strategy to just simply avoid taxes. We should know what the laws and the codes are. So then that way, when we do own real estate, we're not missing out on some of the tax benefits of owning real estate. We should own real estate primarily for the price appreciation and then possibly the passive income as a secondary. Tax advantages are not the best way to own real estate, but it's still important. So first one is 1031 tax deferred exchange. This is for investors, right? Let's just say you buy an investment property because you live in California and you say, hey, I'm going to be living here for quite a while, and my home has gone up in value quite a bit over the last 5 years while I've owned it. I plan on having a 20 or even 30-year career in my city. And so I'm going to buy an investment property and rent it out to someone else. Okay, that's fantastic. But then after you purchase that property, you say, you know what? I really want to move to a different city now. I want to move out to Florida because my family is out in Florida. So you sell your house and you get the standard homeowner deduction. That's one of the ways that we can avoid property tax or capital gains tax. The second way is through a 1031 tax deferred exchange. What it allows you to do is sell an investment property in one market or any area and purchase another real estate asset, whether it be land, multifamily, it doesn't matter. The law reads like for like, and what it means is real estate for real estate. So you can't go out and buy a mobile home and then put it on a piece of land, right? You have to buy the land with that money. You can't buy the mobile home and the land. And you have to use the entire budget. That's another critical element, right? A lot of people think you have to purchase a property that's worth more. And what you have to do is you have to purchase a property that's worth more than your taxable gain. So that means if you buy a $300,000 property and you've depreciated it, which we'll talk about later, down to $100,000, and you sell that $300,000 property for $600,000, your taxable gain would be $500,000, meaning you have to spend $500,000 or more on your next property, right? So you have to use all of the proceeds that you get from selling your real estate asset. So that's something critical to keep in mind when you're shopping for real estate on a 1031 exchange. And you can use this for multiple properties. And you could also do what's called a reverse exchange, which allows you to buy the property first and sell your investment property later. So a couple of different ways to skin the same cat. Next, we're going to talk about the $250,000 homeowner exemption. You can use a great strategy with this called tax loss harvesting. So let's just say you're a homeowner. If you're married, it doubles to $500,000 instead of $250,000. So let's use a married couple as an example. You buy a $500,000 house and you check the market in 2022 and you see your house is worth $1.1 million. And you think, wow, it'd be great to sell it, but we'd have to pay the capital gains tax on it. And yes, because it's over a $500,000 gain, you would have to pay the capital gains tax on the entire $600,000 because that's 1.1 million minus 500,000 that you purchased it for leaves you taxable capital gain of 600,000. You don't get to just subtract the $500,000 from your homeowner exemption. So what you might do is, oh man, now I notice the market's down because we have high interest rates. My home is only worth $950,000. So now you sell your property worth $950,000 and you buy another property on a discount. This is the same exact strategy that stock owners use and stock investors use called tax loss harvesting, except for it's just slightly different, right? So if you buy a stock, let's just say at $100, you notice it's down to $50. You sell that stock and you buy its competitor that's also halfway down. And that competitor goes back up to its original value. Essentially, you were able to write off the losses. And as long as you don't sell that new stock, you get to hold on to the gain. You're kind of doing the same thing with your property, right? When the market's down, that's the best way to find a discount. But you don't want to sell your property at a discount when prices are high, because then you're essentially just selling low when the market's high and then you're buying high. That's not a good move, right? You want to sell low and buy low if you can. So great strategy for homeowners looking to avoid taxes is, for example, right now, if you have a lot of appreciation on your home and you're in a buyer's market, it can be a great opportunity to sell your property just beneath, possibly, if it applies to you, that homeowner exemption amount, which will allow you to buy another property on a discount while avoiding paying taxes on the property that it has appreciated. All right, the third way that we can save money on taxes is through depreciation. Now, there's two kinds of depreciation, right? Or standard depreciation, which typically happens over 27 and a half years. I say the word typically because not all real estate assets are treated the same, and you can only depreciate the building. So for example, if you own a $300,000 home and it's placed on a land that has a value of $100,000, you can only depreciate that building $200,000. You can't depreciate land. Also, if you are in a condo or a high rise, there might be other exemptions or other exceptions to that rule that might cause you to have to pay it over 40 years instead of 27 and a half years. Either way, it's a small little bit of cash flow every single month or every single year back into your wallet in a tax discount, which is really nice to have. It actually will help your passive income. So don't always just look at the passive income. Consider the passive income from the property plus that little bit of tax benefit, and that'll keep you making offers a little bit more aggressive and a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack when it comes to competing out with other investors or other home owners. This also applies to commercial real estate as well. Both 1031 tax deferred exchanges and depreciation can be applied to commercial real estate or residential real estate as long as it's for investment purposes and is not for home ownership. All right. D is advanced depreciation. Now, advanced depreciation allows you to essentially schedule some of your depreciation in advance by essentially saying, hey, this air conditioner is only going to last for so many years. I want to write off this air conditioner within 10 years instead of having it being lumped into my total property value and being written off over 27 and a half years. Hey, there's some appliances that are only going to be viable for 3 years, and I would like those to be depreciated faster than the rest of my property. Hey, there is a repair that I've done. I recently did a carpet repair, and carpet only lasts for 5 years. So that allows you to write off some of the pieces of your real estate a little bit faster than the rest. You should always consult with a tax professional before doing this, as you should not be getting tax advice from a real estate agent. I'm just letting you know what other buyers are doing, and it does affect their offers. If you don't think that tax advantages incentivize people to purchase an asset, you are completely wrong, right? If you don't know what those advantages are tax-wise, and you don't know how that impacts your budget, somebody else is thinking about that. Somebody else is thinking about those tax discounts, and they're thinking, well, yeah, I see this person's offering this, and I can see why that they're offering that, but I'm going to be getting those tax benefits. So for me, I'm willing to pay a couple $1,000s more for that property than that other person is. That way I can get all the benefits that they were looking forward to. Plus, I'm going to give up a little bit of extra money just so I can get those tax benefits. And so it is something to look out for when you are in the real estate market and when you're looking for real estate. The fifth aspect of making money in real estate is leverage. Okay. If I, for example, buy a stock worth $25,000, right? Or I put 5% down on a $500,000 home. And let's just say the stock market has an above average year and it goes up by 20%, right? That turns my $25,000 into $30,000. Phenomenal, right? But remember what I said earlier about inflation, about how it's usually around 2.1% currently, but in historical, the last 100 years, it's usually around 3%. But most commodities that we're purchasing are really more like 4%. And then real estate's going to beat that even by a little bit. So let's just say you have 5% growth on that $500,000 house. You now have, instead of $25,000 of equity, you have $50,000 worth of equity for just a 5% increase in an asset. Now, in my opinion, it's way more likely that the real estate market will go up by 5% in a given year in my particular area than it is for the stock market to go up by over 20%. Now, that's not every single real estate market. That's just the market that I live in. In Las Vegas, a typical year is about 4.6%. That's just over the long-term period of time of possibly the last 30 years, for example, is about 4.6%. So 5% in 1 year would not be unheard of. It would actually be quite normal. So leverage allows you to get a better return on equity. That's the key word, return on equity, because everybody focuses on return on investment. But return on equity is actually the most important part, because that's your skin in the game, is your equity, right? Next, I want to talk about bank financing, right? Now, you can finance stocks through the bank by getting a essentially loan, which is called margin. Now, margin only allows you to purchase a little bit more stock, right? And you can get something called margin call, which means, let's just say you buy $100 worth of Apple stock, right? And you finance it on $50 with a margin, which no margin account is going to allow you to do. You'd have to have way more money. You'd have to have at least maybe $25,000 in your account. But we're just going to use a small number, for example. If that stock drops beneath $50 in value, which is where your loan is at, the bank can essentially margin call you and take your stocks away at a discount. The bank can't do that on a real estate transaction unless you choose to sell or unless you don't make your monthly payments. That's why when we talked earlier last episode about, hey, once you're a homeowner, you need to hedge against bad market forces like recessions or deflation of the currency, where suddenly the dollar is valuable. You need to have cash in your pocket when you're a homeowner. When you're a renter, it's not as important. This is why it's so important, because you can keep your asset. Just because your neighbor is willing to sell their property at a discount doesn't mean you have to. You can wait out the storm and, trudge on ahead to better times, and you'll likely outpace the real estate market in those years coming after a bad time. The people who bought their house in 2004 and never sold their house, those people almost have their home paid off in 2025. They have 9 years left to pay off their home, and their mortgages are significantly lower than if you were to buy a home today. Those people won by not panicking, right? So do the same thing, right? Use the bank financing to your favor and get as much as you possibly can when you're young. And as you're older, pay off as much as you can and reduce your payment as much as possible. The third element is seller financing. Because banks are so willing to lend money against real estate because it's such a great asset class, oftentimes sellers of properties are also willing to be the bank and finance the property for you. So this is a little bit less common when we're in a hot real estate market. But when the real estate market cools off, like right now, this is the opportunity, in my opinion, to give someone like me a call and help you go find a property that's seller finance. You don't have to go through the bank or a traditional credit report in order to do seller financing, which is a huge advantage, not only for the buyer, but also for the seller. All right, last thing, D is loan transfers. The benefit of being in a high interest rate environment, if you're a homeowner and you recently refinanced on a low interest rate, is some banks, not all, and some loan programs, not all, will allow you to transfer that debt over to the new buyer. So essentially the buyer can say, hey, I would like to put down this much on your property. I would like to take over your debt. And instead of me having a $3,500 a month payment, I'm only going to have a $2,500 a month payment. And the seller says, well, what do I get out of this deal, right? And it's quite easy, right? The seller is going to be able to have more buyers willing to purchase their property. More buyers, more willing to purchase a property increases the purchase price. So the buyer can pay a little bit more for the property and still not get killed on the monthly payment, and vice versa. The seller can get out of the debt that they want, they can get the money out of their property, and they can get more for it, even though the interest rate environment is unfavorable for maybe fetching a high offer. Because their loan was transferable and they had a really smart real estate agent that was working for them, they were able to find a buyer that was willing to take it over and give them what they wanted for it. So those are just how, in my opinion, some of the most savvy real estate investors use the 5 concepts of making money in real estate to their advantage. The one area that I didn't cover that much is massive income. You know what we're going to do? We're going to cover how to make massive income in real estate, and we're going to just dedicate an entire episode to that because it's such an important topic. The most important area of it is understanding sweat equity, negotiation, quality repairs, and negotiation on urgent buyers, right? So negotiation on the fixer-upper side and negotiation on the ownership side against the buyer who wants to buy that property for a premium from you. Consider if you're investing in the stock market and you want a platform to do so, we are sponsored by Robinhood and Webull. You can look down in the link in the description below. If you are purchasing or selling real estate in the Las Vegas market, please go over to ethicsrealty.net. Again, links in the description below, and I would love to help you out. Thank you for watching and have a great day.
Hey, business owners, want to get your brand in front of thousands of locals in Vegas without blowing your budget on overpriced ads? Ready to boost your visibility? Use promo code PRTalk for an exclusive offer. Click the link in the description or contact 702-445-9488 to talk to our experts today. Vegas is watching. Make sure they see you.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.